In a historic first, Supreme Court justices heard oral arguments via teleconference this week, including the Little Sisters of the Poor case. It's been a Supreme Court saga for the Catholic nuns. Despite a 2016 High Court victory, the Little Sisters were back at the Supreme Court this week over former President Barack Obama's contraceptive mandate yet again. Pennsylvania and several other states sued in federal court to take away the nuns' religious exemption to the mandate. When the Third Circuit ruled against the Little Sisters last summer, the Catholic nuns asked the Supreme Court to review it. The Supreme Court is taking the unprecedented move to hold arguments by teleconference this month because of the coronavirus pandemic. It's the first time the court made live audio of the arguments available. Let's take a listen to what Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsberg kept bringing up during the Little Sisters' oral arguments.
At the end of the day, the government is throwing to the wind the women's entitlement to seamless, no cost to them. It is requiring those women to pay for contraceptive services. If they can, first they would have to go search for a government plan. And if it turns out, as it will for many of them, that there is no government other plan that covers them, then they're not covered. And the only way they can get these contraceptive services is to pay for them out of pocket, precisely what Congress did not want to happen in the Affordable Care Act.
Joining us now via Skype is Sister Constance Veit. Sister Constance is the communications director for the Little Sisters of the Poor and is herself a Catholic nun in the religious order. First off, Sister, how are you feeling now that the Little Sisters had their day in court again this week?
Relieved and happy initially, at the outcome. It remains to be seen what the final outcome will be, but we felt good about the argument this morning.
And from listening into them, how did the Supreme Court justices respond to your lawyer's argument?
Well, it was clear to us that they take our concerns seriously and they feel that we Little Sisters should be protected. So for the rest, we'll just have to wait until the decision comes down.
I know it's a really unique way to hear oral arguments over the telephone. Sister, was there a moment that stood out to you from the oral arguments?
Honestly, I can't say there was one moment that stood out. It was very technical for much of the argument, so it was a little bit difficult for me to follow since I'm not an attorney.
Sister, what is your response to California and Pennsylvania's lawsuits that essentially claim Catholic nuns are required to be distributors of contraception?
Well, Catherine, this is a fight that we never wanted, and certainly the prolongation we wanted even less. But our lives are devoted to caring for the needy elderly, and what's at the heart of that is our belief in the dignity of human life, the dignity of every human life at every stage of life. And so it would be unthinkable for us, on the one hand, to hold the hand of the dying elderly to protect them, keep them safe, and give them the best of ourselves. And then on the other hand, to be facilitating the killing of unborn human life. So that's just, the two things just can't be reconciled. So we feel that this has been, a struggle for the very soul of our ministry.
Sister, to that point, what has this been like to have a Supreme Court case in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, especially? Your order, as you mentioned, cares for the elderly poor, who are the very people especially vulnerable to this virus.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that, Catherine. We have 24 houses in the United States, and most of our houses, thank God, have remained free of COVID, but we have had several houses that have been affected quite heavily, and I've been helping out at our house in Delaware, which was one of the houses that was hard hit. So, we've just tried to be with the elderly for whatever their needs are, whether they are sick or whether they're healthy. And at the same time, I think that the pandemic and the fact that the Supreme Court heard our case really brings to the fore the plight of the elderly in our society, and that society really needs to invest more attention and more resources and care into the lives of the elderly.
Sister, a ruling is expected next month. What does the Little Sisters day-to-day look like as you wait for that ruling?
Well, our day-to-day looks like trying to care for the elderly with masks and protective gowns on all of our homes. The residents are still in isolation. Our lives, their lives in our homes are usually very communal, with meals together, with a lot of activities, daily mass. None of that is taking place. They're all having to eat in their rooms with tray service. So we're pretty busy. And I have to tell you honestly that these have been the toughest weeks I've ever lived through in my vocation, which is I've been a sister for over 30 years. But they've also been weeks that have made me feel more than ever the need for our vocation, the need for people, for women to be devoted, to be dedicated to caring for the elderly.
And Sister, can you explain to our viewers, if the Supreme Court rules against the Little Sisters, what will that mean for your order?
Well, if the Supreme Court were to rule against us, and if we lost protection from the mandate, what it could mean is fines in upwards of several $1 million a year, which would effectively put us out of business. Not that we like to refer to ourselves as a business, but on the other hand, we've been in existence for over 175 years, and God's providence has always protected us, and we're confident that He's going to be there for us again, and that in the end, God will be protecting us, and God will bring this to the end that we need Him to in order to continue our work here in the United States.
And for viewers who might be hearing about the Little Sisters of the Poor for the first time because of this case, can you give us a little snapshot of your order?
Sure. We were founded in Brittany, France in 1839 by Saint John Jugan. She's one of the more recently canonized saints in the church. And our whole mission is, as her work was, we continue her work, which is to offer the neediest elderly in society of any race and religion a home where they will be welcomed as Christ, cared for as family, and accompanied with dignity and true compassion until God calls them to Himself. So here in the United States,
finally,
we have 24 houses they all have multi-levels of care for the elderly.
And I had the honor of being able to visit one of the homes in Washington, D.C. and see firsthand the beautiful work of the Little Sisters of the Poor. Just want to thank you for joining us this week especially, and thank you for your ministry. Sister Constance Veit of the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Thank you so much, Catherine.